Gather round, gang. All lies within the current of causality. Is there a void in your life? Do you crave violence? Do you like to watch those weaker than you crumble before you in defeat? Do you like acting as the reaper, carving away swaths of souls, as the farmer does to wheat? I suggest therapy, but money's tight, so I offer you an alternative. Dragon's Dogma 2 is an action-adventure child kidnapping RPG developed, published, and then nearly ruined by Capcom. That's right, the people that brought you Monster Hunter made an RPG where you hunt monsters. It is a sequel to another game, the name of which I can't seem to recall. It's on the tip of my tongue. Did you know that the most satisfying thing you can do in this world is watch the light slowly leave a creature's eyes? I did. And with Dragon's Dogma 2, I can finally experience that pure, unfiltered ecstasy myself without any of the negative drawbacks I might face in real life. As much as I wish I could slay my local minotaur, US law declares them an endangered species, and therefore I must settle for a virtual one instead.
Let me tell you something. In battle, there's only one way. You should be using your mouth!
In Dragon's Dogma 2, you are the Arisen, some guy who very intelligently and wisely picked a fight with a colossal, all-powerful dragon, and is now entering the find out part of that decision. The dragon, naturally, steals your heart and marks you as the Arisen, a hero who is one day fated to face it down in battle and steal it back. This whole thing, apparently, is something that just sort of happens every once in a while. The world has a dragon, and some dumbass always tries to fight it and gets their heart stolen. And then the dumbass tries again. Sometimes the Arisen succeeds, sometimes they fail, but the cycle is never-ending. Even after the dragon is defeated, another will take its place eventually. So have fun, knowing that your entire journey is doomed to be repeated endlessly, whether or not you succeed. The cycle will go on for all eternity. It cannot be broken. It cannot be broken.
It cannot be broken.
Not only are you the chosen one, but you're also the rightful heir to the throne of Vermund. I'm not entirely sure why everyone wants the guy who just tried to solo a dragon to be king, but what do I know? I guess they'll do anything to avoid democracy. Fear not, though, for you are not alone. Alongside you are your pawns, other dimensional creatures that live only to serve and fight for the Arisen. They have no free will of their own, so do as you like. They won't mind. I feel like there's an allegory to be made here, but this is a comedy channel, so thankfully I don't have to unpack or examine this any further. Your party will consist of you, your main pawn, and 2 others. Your main pawn will be your primary companion throughout the game, while the other 2 pawns can and should be discarded like the trash they are the moment you level up, because they don't level with you. Every pawn in this game is made by other players, which means that some of you really need to go outside. Me personally, I would never stoop so low as to make my pawn a scantily clad woman to ogle at with my lustful male gaze in place of real human connection. I did make my pawn a short-haired goth tomboy healer girl because we all have our vices. But I at least had the common decency to give her some goddamn clothes. I would have made her a cat girl, but to tell you the truth, they kinda creep me out. Over the course of your adventure, you will face down and fight countless waves of monsters, bandits, and anything just sort of in your way. Don't worry, you're the chosen one, and all of both history and the future has already been written by powers beyond your control, which means that none of the pointless killing that you do is your fault. If that bystander truly was innocent, destiny wouldn't have put them in your way. Like most RPGs, the way you choose to fight is up to you, and there are a total of 10 different vocations for you to play. From the classic sword and board who specializes in tanking for the rest of the group, to a magical healer who keeps morale up and, I assume, does all of the cleaning. Each and every class comes with a wide variety of fun and exciting new abilities, and you can freely swap between them as you go. I mainly played the warrior class, because if you couldn't tell yet, I happen to have a thing for grumpy boys with big swords. If you're an indecisive bottom, and let's be real, you probably are, you can always choose the Warfarer vocation, which is all of the vocations in one. It's the perfect class for the kid in the sandbox who says his special power is to have all of the powers. That annoying little shit. Exploring the world of Dragon's Dogma is like walking through a Kansas City Walmart, constantly surrounded by strange and hostile life forms. Everywhere I turn, I am accosted by non-stop hordes of lizards and goblins. One moment you might be fine, and then the next you're being dragged away by a pack of wolves while your pawns are being thrown off a cliff by harpies. Truly, nowhere is safe in the lands of Vermund. It's not just the small enemies either. There is no end to the number of Cyclopses, Griffins, Minotaurs, Chimeras, and Drakes dotted throughout the land as well. And God help you if you come across more than one at a time. Sometimes, when your health bar is dropped to a nanometer, and you're about to enter a three-way battle between a golem and a griffin, there's no shame in living to fight another day. Round off your day of adventure by setting up camp and enjoying some actual real-life footage of meat being cooked over a campfire, because the developers decided that was cheaper than actually animating it. I'm not joking. Combat in Dragon's Dogma is beautiful. It's meaty, it's chunky, like Campbell's noodle soup. When you hit somebody, you know it, because it smacks like a brick to the teeth. There is no Geneva Convention for goblins, so launch them into the exosphere. Make that Cyclops experience death by 1,000 cuts. Every laceration you leave on its body will serve as a warning for the rest of its kind. Is that griffin giving you trouble? Climb its back, stab little holes in its skull. Get diabolical with it. By the end of the game, monster battles feel more like trophy hunting than an actual fight. Hunt them down to their lairs, slaughter them, and leave their bodies to rot in the sun. You're so brave. Dragon's Dogma has one of my favorite fast travel systems in a video game. Tired of taking in nature's bounty and experiencing the beauty of life? Just use a fairy stone. A fairy stone is a one-time use item that will directly transport you to any port crystal you've placed around the world. I like this for a number of reasons. Firstly, you can only fast travel to a place you've already been to before, since you have to physically place the port crystal you're traveling to. Secondly, fairy stones are not cheap. Especially in the early game, you won't be using them much, which encourages the player to actually explore the map. In the later game, when you'll be making much more money, fairy stones will be much more attainable, which is fine since at this point you've already explored most of the game. That's a genuinely good bit of game design that I felt deserved some recognition. Compared to the first game, which I played up until the point where it told me to jump into a hole about 100 times, pawns have quite a bit more function. For example, pawns from other players might know more about certain quests than you do. You might not know where the legendary blacksmith is, but maybe Fartlicker92's pawn does. Pawns also have a bit more personality this time around. In the first game, they didn't really do much of anything besides fight for you. In this game, you can give them a high five, so, you know, baby steps, I guess. Every time my pawn catches me from a fall, I start twirling my hair and picturing our future together.
Caught you. You'll be alright.
Unlike most RPGs, leveling in Dragon's Dogma is done automatically depending on your class. If you're playing a warrior, you'll grow in strength and fortitude. If you're a healer, you'll probably get better at kissing boys. Bottom. It is a streamlined experience that I don't really care for. However, I understand that my desire to min-max the shit out of my character goes against the game's core principles. Dragon's Dogma is an inherently unserious game. For example, there is an item in the game called the Unmaking Arrow. It is a one-time, single-use item that instantly kills anything you shoot with it. And yes, that includes bosses. The game saves the moment you use it, which means that you can only use it once per playthrough. I, of course, used it to unmake the nearest goblin after obtaining it, purely because I thought it would be funny. This game is goofy. Go along with it and you'll have much more fun. Oh, and there's a crafting system too. I actually didn't notice it until I was about halfway through the game, and I immediately did what I do with all crafting systems and ignored it. I actually added this bit of the script after I already finished the rest of it, because I forgot it was there. I also didn't save any footage of it. This is the professionality you subscribe for.
Cut! No!
Dragon's Dogma 2 is not what I would call a pretty game. It is, however, what I would call a big game. What it lacks in fidelity, it makes up for in sheer impressive scale. Everything in this game is big. Big monsters, big mountains, big map, big fun. Graphics in general have never really been something that mattered all that much to me, so if they have to make the rock textures just a little bit uglier to let me fly on the back of a goddamn griffin while I try to pry out its spine, I'm fine with that. It's just not going to be winning any beauty pageants. But if I have to trade beauty for fun,
I'll make that deal.
the world has a sort of lived-in feel. There are ruins from ancient civilizations around every corner. One of my favorite areas in the game is actually the main city from the first game, completely eroded by the passage of time and mostly submerged into the ocean. There's nothing in the game that tells you that this is the city of Grand Soren, but it is. It's one of those things that you can complete the entire game without noticing. It's also pretty much the only connection this game shares with the first one. The first game, and all of the adventures I had within it, might as well have never happened. It's kind of heartbreaking in a way, seeing the once thriving city from the first game reduced to just another ruin to explore. Animations are a mixed bag. The game doesn't have very many cutscenes, but the ones that are there are pretty good. I also want to add that the cutscenes do a great job of incorporating your character into them. I often find in games with character creation that my character tends to stick out weirdly in cutscenes, but I didn't have that problem here. I credit that to the frankly insanely good character creator. At one point, I ran into someone's pawn that looked identical to Lae'zel from Baldur's Gate. Capcom actually released the character creator separately for free, so if you ever want to try it out for yourself, go check it out. Combat animations are also excellent. They're fluid and violent at the same time, like an angry belly dance. Some of the stabbing animations while you're climbing an enemy are especially brutal. The rest of the animation, however, is, not so good. I always feel like I'm being transported back to 2008 every time I talk to a character outside of a cutscene. It's like talking to a mannequin. It's kinda creepy. The world map is convoluted. Paths tend to twist and turn, which gives this sort of barely tamed feel to everything. The world outside is hostile, not just from the wildlife within, but the terrain itself as well. There are cliffs and crevices everywhere, open swaths of magma and water filled with monsters straight from your browser history. Honestly, I'd be more surprised if I encountered something friendly. There is a good amount of variety in the environment as well, from lush forests to barren deserts to sweltering volcanoes. Each area in the game comes with its own challenges and quirks. It really does feel like a grand adventure across foreign and distant lands. The map itself isn't really all that large, but because of the limitations to fast travel, it feels a lot bigger than it actually is. Which is, is what I tell the ladies.
Please stop shaking me.
Sound design is just about as you would expect from a game where you can summon tornadoes and lightning storms. It's dramatic, it's bombastic. When I'm climbing the back of a Cyclops and that soundtrack kicks in, I just want to bust a dang move. The whole soundtrack just makes me want to go out and slay a dragon, which, in a game where you're supposed to slay a dragon, is a good thing, I suppose. Except for the main theme, for some reason. This feels more like the theme to Downton Abbey or something. And I've never even seen that show before, I'm just assuming. I refuse to watch British media because they're not a real country and our queen lived longer. Voice work is, it's very Capcom.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Lady, supersized bitch. Ugly ass psycho doll.
Books, sir. Books, books, and more books.
It seems this game takes place in a world where nobody can talk like a normal human being.
I've always wanted a real fight with you. 1-on-1.
Goofy voice acting is like a Capcom staple at this point. It kind of makes me wonder if Capcom directs their voice actors to say things in the most awkward, stilted ways possible on purpose.
'Tis raining.
Let us find cover. Ere the water enters our boots.
You can call it bad voice acting if you want, and you'd be right, but I honestly kind of find it endearing. I'm not making excuses or anything, I just can't bring myself to be angry about it.
What? You are the Arisen.
The voice cast this time around is relatively unknown. I bet you sly bastards thought you could sneak another Dimension 20 cast member past me, but I caught it. Nice try. The voice actor for the dragon looks exactly like what I would expect a dragon's voice actor to look like. Other than that, pretty much nobody that I recognized. My feelings on Dragon's Dogma 2 are exactly how Queen Rat would describe our relationship. Complicated and... oh shit, I'm already running out of jokes. Currently, Dragon's Dogma 2 has some pretty mixed reviews, and I 100% understand that. This is not a game without its flaws. It's a game of high highs and very low lows. Just to get it out of the way, one of the biggest concerns about the game currently are the microtransactions. Now, I've already made my thoughts clear on microtransactions, so I'm not sure why anybody would continue to defy me. Expecting players to cough up extra cash after paying $70 for a game is downright criminal. There's no excuse for it. However, I'm incredibly happy to say that these microtransactions are completely, utterly pointless. There is zero reason for you to buy any of these items. Every single item here is something that you can get in the game already. Seriously, I was finding some of this shit on the ground. They're not even that hard to find. Take these wake stones, for example. Here's a clip of me wasting them because they're really not that hard to come by. You only use those if you die anyway, so who cares? And rift crystals, I was drowning in them by the end of the game because I barely even used them. All of these things you can get super easily. I honestly don't know why Capcom decided to make them microtransactions. Seriously, if you're paying money to buy these things, why even play the game? It's scummy, and I don't excuse it, but why the hell would I want to buy them in the first place if I can get all these things with less than like half an hour of effort? Another major complaint is the performance issues. I played on PlayStation, and while I think the 30 frames per second is inexcusable on current generation hardware, there have already been some efforts made to improve the performance. I can't speak to the performance on PC, apparently it's not great, so maybe wait a hot minute for that to get fixed. Otherwise, I'll say that it's perfectly playable on console, though not ideal. And now, on to some of my own gripes. I'm gonna be honest, I can't help but feel a little disappointed in the way of enemy variety in the game. There's only like 10 or so enemy types. That is, until you reach the last few hours or so of the game, when you'll suddenly start encountering several more enemy types. It feels really weird to lock half the enemy roster behind the final few hours of the game. I really don't know what the plan was here. Also, these are all the exact same enemy types from the first game. I think there's a couple more, but for the most part, they're identical. The same goes for the bosses. Up until the final end-game area, you're mostly just fighting bosses from the first game, and I ended up fighting so many of them that I eventually just started avoiding them. I think I killed something like 30 Cyclopses by the time I beat the game. Again, this changes once you reach the end game, but what the hell? Why throw in all of the really cool new enemies and bosses right at the end? Another thing that kind of irked me was the map. As much as I like exploring, the map feels way too linear. Compared to something like Skyrim, where the map is this big, expansive landscape to explore, the map of Dragon's Dogma is more like a line with a bunch of small paths and areas around it. This is something that I didn't care for in the first game either, so it just seems kind of weird to double down on it. Now that I think about it, there's a whole lot of this game that just sort of feels like a slightly improved version of the first game. There really isn't a ton of new stuff. It's just prettier and runs worse. Honestly, if you wanted to get the Dragon's Dogma 2 experience for cheap, I'd recommend just buying the first game. You can get it on the PlayStation Store or Steam right now for less than half the price, and I don't think you'd be missing out on much. As impressive as it is that every NPC in the game has a name and schedule and all that, it's not as cool when they all have one singular line of dialogue. And you know what? While we're here, I'm gonna say it. 20,000 gold for a bad sex scene is outrageous. Finally, while I do appreciate the effort taken to make the pawns a little bit more exciting from the previous game, would it kill you just to make them a little bit more interesting? I get it, they're supposed to be soulless husks that just serve to help the player, but dog, you wrote them that way. They don't have to be boring if you don't want them to be. I love me a cold, distant, emotionless goth girl, but I kind of feel bad for any player that doesn't share my fetishes. It's hard to say exactly how I feel about this game because, just like the Scissor Sisters, I can't decide. There are moments where I'm having more fun than I've had all year, but then when I manage to fire off more than one singular synapse at a time, which, you know, to be fair, rare occasion, I just sort of feel like I've played it all before. However, and I cannot stress this enough, none of that matters because we got rats, folks! That's right, fellas, we made it. We're in the game!
I submit.
Again, it seems like most of the Steam reviews are pretty accurate, which means we once again have to travel to the forbidden lands of Google reviews. God help us all. Like a knockoff Wish version of Skyrim. 0 difficulty levels, and the fact that there is no warning when going into a fight under level makes this game an absolute headache to play. It's not even fun, it's angering and not well thought out. I have to constantly travel back to a city to heal before I even get to a quest, and then travel back to a city again just to heal a second time before I can attempt a quest. It's stupid. Whoever thought of this health system needs to stay far away from video game making forever! Alright, settle down. You actually can heal yourself outside of town by resting at campfires. Your warning for going into a fight under level is getting smacked across the map. Also, can we not compare a game with good combat to Skyrim, please? It's 2024. This game feels like a game from the 1996. This game is truly awful. I don't even know what other game you can compare it to. Maybe Dragon's Dogma 1? Or Dragon Age? Just don't compare it to Skyrim. I'm playing with pawns when I could have live players alongside of me. It's like they designed this game 10 years ago and finally got it done. You can't even dodge or parry. Okay, I can block, I can kick, I can shoot an arrow, but it shoots for me and aim by itself. Waste of my money. Clunky gameplay. First of all, you can dodge, you just have to be the right class. Second of all, it's a single player game. It says so right on the tin. Why are you mad that you can't play with other players in a single single-player game. Third of all, you said it feels like it was both from 1996 and also designed 10 years ago. I'm afraid 1996 was actually almost 30 years ago, Randy. Worst game launch in years. Worse than Starfield and Cyberpunk 2077 launches. Alright. I'm gonna stop you right there. Worst launch than Starfield? Come on, dude. That game still sucks. Say what you want, but this game is at the very least fun to play. All in all, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a fun game, if a very, very flawed one. I can't, in good conscience, tell you to buy it unless you're willing to look past the glaring issues. If you cannot, I can recommend the previous game because it's basically the same thing, and if you still want more afterwards, go ahead and pick this one up. Personally, I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I also made a Scissor Sisters reference earlier, so maybe my opinion shouldn't be so highly valued. If you want my advice, wait a little bit before you buy. Hopefully in a few months the performance issues will be fully patched and perhaps the price will drop a little bit, giving you more spare change for those sweet, sweet microtransactions. I rate it 0 out of 10 because they won't let me romance my pawn, you cowards! Before I go, I just want to say thank you all again for watching. Funny number somehow went straight past 500, and I don't know how to react. You guys are awesome. To everyone who subscribed, thank you so much. To everyone else who is not subscribed, I refuse to ask people to do so out of principle, but I will say that if you do subscribe, I will value you more as a person. Do with that information as you will. Also, to everyone who left a nice comment on my last video, you guys gotta stop. My ego is like a well-stretched balloon. It's far too easy to inflate. At this rate, I'm gonna be insufferable. Until next time, gang, one love, see ya.
No food in the fridge, bugs in the crib, mice infested. Mold on the walls, remember it all, I'll never forget. The problems we had, the problems with dad, the struggles of paying rent. The people we had that took all we have, I've learned to forgive.